Hello, everyone. Welcome to this BAKERview seminar all about baking gluten-free. I'm Dr. Lynn Carson, your host for today. This seminar is brought to you by Goodway Technologies. With over 55 years of providing innovative maintenance and sanitation solutions, Goodway Technologies has the industry's most reliable surface and conveyor belt sanitizing equipment for a robust hygiene in food production plants. Commercial bakeries, snack producers, and processing facilities and breweries are just places where sanitation professionals can find their high quality machines. And now I will share my presentation on gluten free. Welcome to this seminar, everyone. Today I will be talking about gluten free. So, gluten-free baked goods have gained popularity in recent years, not only among those with gluten-related conditions, but also among individuals who choose to follow a gluten-free diet for personal reasons or due to the halo effect it has on their family. Right. So I'm sure many of you have heard, I have, your friend saying, I have a family member who is celiac recently, and we all need to keep gluten away from the kitchen. So they start looking to bake gluten free or even buying gluten free products like Canyon Bakehouse, um, Udi's, all those very popular breads out there in the market. So this really incentivized other family members and friends, especially when you come visit for a meal, right? To really join in and enjoy more gluten-free products. And over the years, these products provide a tasty and inclusive option for individuals seeking to maintain gluten-free lifestyle. I recently tried a gluten-free product in the market, and it is just amazing how it tastes. So I hope you enjoy this particular presentation. We are going to go through this presentation with these 4 points today. And um, so I wanted to make sure that all of you know this, right? This is actually one of the largest health trends out there affecting the baking industry. And just in case you're wondering if you could get um, the download of this slide, I wanted to let you all know that all this information is available on this guide. So if you could take a picture of this, download it right now so that you have it on your iPhone or iPad, and everything is in there. What I'm covering today, it's all going to be in there. In fact, most of the details that I won't go into today is all going to be in there. So download the free guide today. Okay. So gluten-free products have taken over the baking industry, like I said, and it's just been developing really amazing bread, crackers, cookies with just incredible texture that is very similar to conventional wheat products, right? Um, Though gluten-free is a strong trend, it is built on the coattails of the celiac, right? So celiac disease is an autoimmune disorder caused by the ingestion of gluten. So it's not an option for celiacs to eat, bread. It's just not possible for them to consume anything that's wheat-based. Gluten is a protein found in wheat, barley, rye, triticale, and spelt. It is responsible for a wide variety of wheat-based baked goods, right? So due to the importance of gluten in baked products, its substitution represents a significant challenge for many, many bakers who are looking to enter this trend. All right. What is the market size? Why does it impact you? Okay. The current market is at 12.3 billion US dollars as of 2023. Okay. This is large. This is a large market. Not only is it large, but it's growing at 10.1% every year. And it seems to be increasing. When I first talked about gluten free about 7, 8 years ago, this number was just 3%. Now it's 10%. So, like I said, it's based on the halo effect. It's based on families taking care of their members. It's growing. And I believe it's growing because of all the technologies that I'm going to be touching on and just baking fantastic and delicious gluten-free products. So, the gluten-free market offers healthy alternatives. Okay, so the driving factor of this is caused by health concerns of consumers. And so far, I've seen novel product releases are increasing the industry's interest, which has driven its growth every day. So, what is gluten free? Gluten free is a novel baking trend characterized by the total substitution of wheat flour. So, the absolute substitution of wheat flour is necessary for individuals with celiac disease, and this substitution can be made with a wide variety of alternative flours. These alternative flours are usually free from wheat, barley, triticale, and spelt, in combination with starch, hydrocolloids, proteins, and emulsifiers. If you use all these together in a combination, it will produce baked goods with similar organoleptic properties to those obtained with the use of traditional wheat flour. So, since wheat flour is the main building block of conventional baked goods, its substitution requires careful consideration when producing gluten free baked goods. However, many ingredients may intervene with this during the production and the product development process. This leads to products that has less desirable texture, flavor, aroma, and mouthfeel. But here are a few alternative flours and fillers that are often blended together to provide you a wheat flour alternative. We do a deep dive into their unique properties in our gluten-free pocket guide. So many have asked me which of these non-wheat flours are more superior. So it really depends on what you're baking and what functionality you're looking for. I would definitely look into quinoa, um, corn, and chia, and a blend of that for a superior nutritious bread, right? Because chia has the extra viscosity that you need. If you want something that is just like a basic filler, look into rice, look into tapioca. They do not really contribute much towards the rheology of the dough, other than during the baking step, and they don't have much in terms of nutrition as well. So that's why you have to fortify your blends usually with uh, thiamine. I can't remember all the things that you fortify wheat flour with, riboflavin, iron, and niacin. So and the B vitamins as well. So when you use rice and tapioca, you really need to fortify your flours. Okay. Coconut flour just gives it a really incredible taste and texture to it. So it's the same from almond flour, right? But some celiac, actually most often celiac disease sufferers would also have nut allergies. So this is the reason why not everyone can, use nut flour all the time. Okay. So I wanted to touch a little bit about buckwheat flour. Buckwheat flour is not a wheat. Okay, it's a seed, so it does not have the wheat, the gluten allergen in it. All right. So you can find out more in the pocket guide. So let's go into some of the major ingredients that we use in gluten-free. Okay. I think if this is not your first time on here, I think you know that I am passionate about talking about the functionality of ingredients because each and every one of them matter in your formulation. Each and every one of them bring more functionality and a probability of a successful product. So water is one of them. Okay. Water aids in a variety of functions in both regular and gluten-free baked goods. Among them are number one, the hydration of ingredients, aiding in the binding of the protein system and facilitating the formation of the dough or batter. You want to have water, and once you add water into the system, you are going to activate the ingredients. You're going to be activating the pre-modified starches, the gums, and the fibers like chia and flaxseed. Okay. By activating the gelling and mucilage function, you are going to have a different rheology altogether. Okay. The amount of water used in gluten-free bread formulations can really vary depending on factors such as the type of baked goods, the type of flour, the desired texture of the product, and the environmental conditions during baking. Okay, so let's talk about fat next. Okay, it plays an important role in baked goods for the production, whether it's wheat-based or gluten-free products. So the most commonly used kinds are vegetable oils. Um, Many bakeries also like to use butter or a vegan version of that, which is margarine or pastry margarine. Um, some gluten-free pastries and baked goods also use shortening in terms of palm oil. Okay, so fat contributes to baked goods as number one, texturizer, right? It coats the flour particles, it breaks up the texture, it makes it more short and crumbly. Okay, and moisturizing. It gives the customers a really moist kind of a chew. The more fat you use, actually not water, the more fat you use, the more moist your product is going to taste. It adds to the flavor and also leavening when you include it with when you include it with sugar during the creaming method. Okay, like I said, mouthfeel and flavor is an important function of fat. And lastly, it improves browning when it is sprayed onto baked goods. Um, Fat is an excellent heat transfer ingredient. So the more you spray on top of the baked goods, the more it transfers the heat onto the surface, the faster it will brown. So some of the secrets that I use for gluten-free products, especially, is adding like an egg wash with sugar, and then just spraying it with oil on top, and you'll get a really nice browning effect to it. Okay, next, let's talk about sweetness. And as we know, sugar is an essential ingredient in many baked goods, especially in sweet goods and desserts. It contributes to not only sweetness, but the browning effect. And it participates in the Maillard browning reaction. Therefore, this is why your products with less sugar is going to brown less. Okay, all because of the Maillard reaction. It acts as a substrate for yeast during the fermentation process. And the more sugar you add to your product, the faster it's going to ferment, right? And also, if you want to control your yeast, you can either cut your yeast or cut your sugar. Okay. Um, in some cake types, it contributes to the leavening, especially in the creaming stage where you cream the fat and the sugar. That's what you add in uh, the gas nuclei so that your leavening can work within that nuclei. Without fat, you're not going to create those nuclei, right? Okay, let's talk about hydrocolloids. What are hydrocolloids? Hydrocolloids are actually soluble fiber. Some people might say it is soluble fiber. Some people calling gums. They play an important role in the production of gluten-free baked goods by increasing the viscosity, right? So we got to understand what gluten brings to the equation when it comes to bread. Not only does it bring strength, it brings viscosity, it brings elasticity, it brings water absorption, so all these attributes need to be replaced by different components of your gluten-free flour, of your proteins, starches, and hydrocolloids. Hydrocolloids are very powerful. So if you want functionality, I would definitely go to hydrocolloids immediately. Okay, some of the hydrocolloids out there are what they call gums. For example, are like acacia gum. Some of the lesser known gums that are out there can also be used. But these are the major gums that are being utilized by the gluten-free industry right now. We're talking about xanthan, guar carrageenan, carboxymethylcellulose, hydroxymethylpropylcellulose. Okay, all these are FDA approved ingredients to be used in food. All right, so gums, don't forget them when you are creating gluten-free products. Okay, like I said, um, you need to produce products that takes the place of gluten, right? So gluten is a protein. So let's explore what gluten is. Okay, so in bread, gluten has to provide that fundamental foundation upon which the baked good is being built upon, right? So proteins are the actually proteins and alternative proteins are the foundation of all baked goods. Therefore, when you replace gluten functionality, it's key that you find a protein that really would support that structure, that network. Okay. In gluten-free products, protein isolates can be used to improve the volume and texture and structure of baked goods by providing similar functions to gluten. It improves the chewiness and moistness of the product. It helps strengthen the dough and batters, and it provides the network for stability. So it aids in the production of um, volume for gluten-free products as well. And last but not least, protein isolates improves the content of the final baked product. So for every protein that's being produced out there, including like if you get the product vital wheat gluten as an ingredient, there are going to be wheat protein isolates. What they do is they isolate from the vital wheat gluten into finer protein isolates. Take, for example, whey, right? Whey is an excellent protein to use actually in gluten free formulations. It's a very well known ingredient in the industry, and it has produced really amazing isolates in terms of functionality. So, not only do you get the whey protein, but you get the different isolates as well with the whey protein. And sometimes, if you're already producing something with a dairy allergen, like you're using butter in your formulation, you're not a vegan baker, whey is actually a go-to a product to use. So, with between whey and gluten, that the isolates market there is very common. So most of the people that produces these two ingredients would have the isolate version. Okay, so let's talk about modified starches. Modified starches are also network supporters. They are starches that have gone through a chemical or physical process that modify or alter their properties, improving their overall function. So there are chemically modified starches, there are physically modified starches, like I said. Chemical would mean like maybe they use an acid to really change the starch so that it could boil up properly. Physical modification would be they boil the starch and then they gelatinize the starch and then they dry it out. That's your pre-gel starch. Okay. So they play a crucial role in providing texture, because they set the texture, right? If you made some gluten-free items um, without modified starch, I think you'll see and you'll feel a very, very gummy-like structure, So you would want some pre-gel in there, or, modified starch in there if it's too gummy. Okay. It The stability in gluten-free baked goods is also caused by starches. So, to summarize it all, modified starches are necessary to provide your texture, structure, and viscosity to the product, right? Okay, next, let's talk about chemical leavening. So, leavening agents are usually used in gluten-free products because I've visited many, many gluten-free plants, and they just don't have the space for a long fermentation time. Okay. And fermentation in gluten-free systems really, really vary based on what product you use. Okay. So let's talk about leavening acids. So, leavening leavening agents play a crucial role in the development of gluten-free baked goods. And it's not just baking powder or double acting baking powder. When you're at that stage of production where your output is really high, I would suggest moving away from double acting baking powder because you really want to control the release of the gas. Okay. So you would want to look into getting a leavening acid and baking soda and determine which leavening acid is best for your process with the baking soda. Okay, you just can't use baking soda, it's not effective. Okay, and please don't use vinegar or tartaric acid because those are very weak in terms of gas generation. There are also aluminum free options, both from Kudos and Enofis, in terms of baking powder. if you're concerned about having the word aluminum on your label. And these options uh, really brings about the best solution for the reaction between the acid and the base. Okay, acid bases are really important in your leavening system. Okay, um, let's talk about the next leavening system, which is natural leavening, which is yeast base, right? So yeast, we all know what yeast is. Once you add water and some flour, sugar, it starts working, right? But it's uncontrollable kind of gas formation and it takes time. So that's why, people use chemical leaveners. So it's a natural leavener. It helps contribute to your volume and therefore gives you a light, airy texture. Um, in certain um, in certain systems, um, other than wheat-based conventional products, yeast still produce dough conditioning because it does consume the damaged starch within your gluten-free system, and it does once it's consumed those starches, it's going to produce acids and carbon dioxide, right? And that's where the acids come out and work on the dough. So it does provide some dough conditioning there. Um, with the production of acids and gas comes the production of alcohol, right? And that's where you get the amazing yeasty alcoholic aroma from yeasted gluten-free bread. Last but not least, depends on how much you ferment the yeast, you're going to produce acids. Okay, the longer the ferment, the more acids you produce, the less the pH. And this is really going to help in your shelf life as well. So emulsifiers are ingredients that have a polar and non-polar end. Okay. So why is this important? Okay, it keeps the fat and the water in stability. It keeps the bubble structure in stability so that the the cells don't coalesce and become bigger bubbles. Once you see bigger bubbles and smaller bubbles in your system, regardless of whether it's bread, cake, cookies, you are going to need emulsifiers. Okay, so emulsifiers produces uniform cell structure, and not only does it do that, when you slice your bread, and you slice your cake, and you're like wondering where all these crumbs are coming from, it's because your system does not have emulsifiers. Okay, emulsifiers just improves the stability of the baked products. And I'm specifically talking about mono and diglycerides. Okay. All right. So let's go into biological instruments. I call enzymes biological instruments, but actually they are biological proteins that have a function, okay? Like, for example, phospholipase, proteases, alpha amylase, okay? They break down complex carbohydrates and proteins and they promote better hydration in the dough, providing some dough development and on top of that, enzymes can enhance the texture and volume of gluten-free bread while providing a clean label solution. Okay, so let's go into the processing part of gluten-free. So let's talk about bread. We are very close to the conventional way of making bread in terms of the entire process. Um, but we do not need to have a long development time because there's no gluten to develop, right? So usually the mixing time is a third of that of regular breads. So with gluten-free doughs, which are extremely sensitive, make sure that you keep the dough temperature as low as possible. All right. So everything from the dough side into depositing um, and resting and fermenting is going to be specifically unique to gluten-free because you need a special gluten-free dough equipment. Okay. And by the way, our sponsors here, CPS, would have the proper layout and equipment for you. So please go ahead and contact them. All right. So one thing I would like to point out in terms of gluten-free bread production is the bake. Okay, so remember, it's the water is all being hydrated by gums and modified wheat starch. Okay, it's not gluten. So it's going to take an extremely long time to get the water out of the systems, right? So usually it takes about 60 minutes to 90 minutes to bake a gluten-free loaf in the oven. So do not cut short, do not cut short the baking time, mainly because if you don't bake out enough of the water, it's going to take a longer time to cool. And the longer time to cool means that you need a larger production area to store the bread before you can slice, because slicing um, warm gluten-free bread is a mess. Okay, you don't want to do that. So focus on the bake out, and I would recommend using the mold or something that thermal logs your process to get it to arrival, to make sure that the temperature stays above 190, 200 for at least 20% of the time of your bake time. Okay, so all that's in our thermal profiling paper that's found on BAKERpedia as well, and that particular technique can be used for gluten-free bread. Okay, so um, baking cooling is really important for gluten-free breads, and you don't want to cool it too long because the longer it seeps out, the more mold it collects, the faster your gluten-free bread is going to mold. Okay, so we address all these issues in the pocket guide, so go ahead and read up on it. Okay, let's talk about cake next. Cake is pretty straightforward. Um, it's just a fast makes. Don't actually, it's maybe a little more resilient than traditional cakes because of all the pre-modified starches in there. But again, the baking part is longer. Okay. Goes the same with cookies. Everything cookies, conventional wheat based products, same processing, right? Just the baking part. You just need to bake it out a little longer. All right. And we go into packaging. Cooling and packaging is important. Preferably, you don't need to slice the product, but if you do, you need to cool it to a certain temperature, and we address this in the pocket guide. And packaging is really important as soon as possible because you don't want the mold spores to collect. Okay. All right. So that's the end of our presentation. And again, if you want more information on this, it's all in the Pocket Guide, so download the Pocket Guide today. All right, let's go into Q&A. It depends on your gluten-free system. Um, for cookies, there's no difference. I think either or. Um, for cake, it's better to use modified starches because a lot of American cakes have high ratio of sugar, and sugar will affect starch gelatinization. Okay, therefore, that's why you need to use more pre-gel starches, either the acid modified or the physically modified starches in gluten-free systems. Okay, so for cakes, it's important. For bread, you can do either or. I have seen just amazing results coming out from HPMC, right? HPMC alone can really sometimes be the substitution for everything in terms of hydrocolloids and modified starches. So again, depends on your system, and that's how I would approach that. I think if you look at our Baker paper, you're going to find shelf life extension solutions in our Baker paper library. So go ahead and start there. But basically, the main points are sanitation. Okay, make sure your cooling belts are clean. Make sure your air filters are clean. Make sure people use gloves, right? And then if that doesn't work, look into preservatives like cultured corn away solids for bread, um, rowan berry extracts for cakes and cookies, and also if you're not concerned about clean label, use potassium sorbate. Okay, and Belcam has a specific product that has encapsulated sorbic acid or encapsulated, I think, yeah, sorbic acid that replaces potassium sorbate. So there are numerous ways to do it as well. And like I said in my previous slide, cool faster. How do you cool faster? Bake it out more. Bake it out more, cool faster, pack faster. When you condense this, you're going to prevent the mold buildup on the gluten-free products. And gluten-free products tend to mold so much faster because of the higher water activity. Okay, so you got to make sure that you are in control of all these things. Yes, correct. Because quick breads are very high in sugar. So that's the problem with quick breads. That's why you get such dense gluten-free quick breads because there is not enough structure, right? So in fact, I would reach out to your ingredient producer like Ingredion, right? And ask them what is the best. I would go with a chemically modified starch, that can support that network and control the bake. Okay, so I mean, Ingredient is one of the experts in the gluten-free field, so they are going to help you find a solution there. I believe there is enzyme solution out there to do this. I've It's just a very recent one. And don't forget, you have also all these other starches to activate the yeast. Although tapioca and rice doesn't go through the typical milling process, and they don't have much damaged starch for the yeast to work on, you have the pre-gels, and you have the sorry, pre-gelatinized starches, right? So those are physically modified starches that the yeast can work on. So if you don't use either of this, I believe enzyme innovation has an enzymatic solution to reduce the sugar in your bake formulation. There are numerous um, protein that is gluten free coming up in this space. Okay. And a lot of them is plant based. Okay. So that's good news for all of us, right? So the first one I want to point out is a product called white chia protein. Okay. That's from Banexia. And it actually improves the protein content of your product and also uh, improves the viscosity. So, Banexia's information is in the pocket guide, so please feel free to reach out to them for this particular function. The next function, which is really in its very infant stage is leaf proteins. Um, so a new startup has isolated proteins uh, from the leaves of plants. It's a very small, little, tiny portion, but it works, right? It is very functional. However, um, it's still expensive to buy into that protein. So if you want a um, a non-allergenic plant-based protein, listen to our Baked in Science podcast where Mark talked to the founders of this particular technology. Okay, so it's in the recent Baked in Science podcast, which is maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago. Okay, so I hope that helps. Yes. So the reason why I say that is because gluten-free is very, very fragile, and you want to be as gentle as possible. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because I don't want you to be dumping more gums, hydrocolloids, and modified starches into the system so that you can handle a rough proof, right? So lower temperature, longer time proof is really going to help your system. Okay. Um, and temperature is a huge deal, especially um, especially if you deal with physically modified starches and gums like xanthan or guar. If you use an acid-based starch and if you use HPMC or CMC, then you're going to have a more robust system for the proofing section of your process. Okay. So salt work against yeast in systems. Okay, it does not support yeast growth. So the more salt you put, the longer it will take to ferment. So salt is needed for the taste of your baked product. If you make something, either a bread, cake, or cookie without salt, you will definitely taste the difference. So recommended usage around 1 to 2%. I wouldn't go above 2%. But anything more than 2% is going to affect the activity of the yeast. Thank you everyone for coming. See you all soon. Bye.